And Russia has accused Ukraine of carrying out a drone strike on a hotel in the southern Kherson region.
And this killing at least 24 people who were celebrating New Year's. Now, the attack has sparked renewed tensions between the two nations. And according to Vladimir Saldo, the Russia-appointed governor of the Kherson region, 3 drones struck a cafe and hotel on a Black Sea coast in Korli, where more than 100 revelers were celebrating the New Year. Calling the strike deliberate, Vladimir Saldo said that many have been burnt alive in the fire. Russia's investigative committee has said that it has opened a probe into the attack.
The images posted on his Telegram channel showed a building gutted by fire with piles of rubble and charred remains scattered across the site. The building showed signs that a fierce fire had raged, and there were what looked like bloodstains on the ground. At least one dead body was seen covered beneath a white sheet. The Russian Foreign Ministry has condemned the attack, calling it a terrorist act and warning Kiev of appropriate consequences. They have also urged international organizations to condemn the attack and accused Ukraine of deliberately sabotaging peace talks.
And on the other hand, a Russian strike in Kharkiv region has left 1 person injured and killed several animals in the wildlife park. The park's director, Ivan Dostov, described the scene as chaotic, saying the animals were terrified and that while birds have been killed, the exact number remains unknown.
Meanwhile, Russia says it has decoded data from a Ukrainian drone that attempted to target Putin's residence in Novgorod region. Deputy Chief of Russia's General Staff, Admiral Igor Kostyukov, announced the findings and released images showing him handing U.S. officials the drone's control mechanism.
We'd like to inform you that we've found the wreckage of the drones that carried out this attack. The navigation systems of some of these drones are well preserved and technically functional. A decryption of the memory contents of the navigation controllers of these drones, performed by specialists from Russian intelligence agencies, has irrefutably confirmed that the target of the attack was the complex of buildings housing the Russian president's residence in the Novgorod region.
While Ukraine and U.S. have disputed Russia's account of the attempted strike, Ukraine has accused Russia of driving a wedge between Kiev and Washington after a weekend meeting between Trump and Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky.
And well, to discuss this scenario further, we're now being joined by Giorgio Cafiero from Washington, D.C. He is a professor at Georgetown University and CEO of Gulf State Analytics. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Now, the situation looks very tense, and this is at a moment when Trump had earlier said that he's very positive about these peace talks. What kind of implications do you think it would have now on the peace talks that Trump was so confident about?
Yeah, well, first of all, Happy New Year's, and
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me back on the program. I think the first thing to point out about this attack is that this plays out very emotionally in Russia, in Russian culture. As a consequence of Soviet history, New Year's is a very, very special holiday, even more so than Christmas. So there's a very emotional layer here that needs to be appreciated. But to get to your question, this is definitely going to undermine the hopes of some sort of a diplomatic push, hopes that some diplomatic momentum will be in play as we start 2026. I'm confident that Russia will respond very forcefully, and I'm sure Ukraine will respond to that. And it makes it more difficult for us to imagine this war winding down.
Absolutely, Mr. Cafiero. And while there's more to unpack there, but we have some breaking news coming in. Now, in the latest, what we have is Iran, which has ushered in the new year with violent protests that refuse to die down.
Now, of course, we talk about Russia again. Now, we have some breaking news from Russia, too. Russia has now claimed its air defense have downed 201 Ukrainian drones in 7 hours. That includes 21 over Moscow. Right, and the other regions that were targeted include Belgorod, Bryansk, Rostov, among others. Now, in the latest, Russia has claimed that its air defense have downed 201 Ukrainian drones in 7 hours, including 21 over Moscow. Now, and the other regions which were targeted include Belgorod, Bryansk, Rostov, among others.
Now, Mr. Kefiro, how should we look at the latest developments now that we've entered into 2026 and the war has again spilled into yet another year? Now, do you think the peace is still going to remain elusive in 2026? And if not, what is the price of that peace going to be like?
Well, unfortunately, this is not a great start to 2026 from the perspective of those who would like to see the conflict in Ukraine begin to wind down. I think it's really clear that both sides are continuing to fight, and obviously Ukraine is trying to do everything it can to really increase the cost that the Russians have to pay for continuing their war against Ukraine. And these drone attacks inside Russia, I'm afraid, are going to continue to be more and more common, as we can also say about Russia's attacks on vital infrastructure in Ukraine. While both sides claim that they're not targeting civilians, there is something to say, though, about sort of a war of narratives taking place. And I think bringing us back to this New Year's attack on the hotel and cafe on the Black Sea coast in Orly, it's quite clear that I think Russia is going to use this as an opportunity to depict the Ukrainian side as being guilty of waging terrorism and mindful of the fact that this was a civilian target. And I think obviously that is going to be, an important message that Russia sends out as it's sort of trying to make its case that Ukraine is the country that is responsible for the diplomatic initiatives not going forward any further right now. And I think obviously Russia is definitely trying to capitalize on the fact that there wasn't any Western condemnation of this attack as well.
All right. Well, of course, also the other thing that comes to mind is Trump. Now, we did see him comment about he's going to try as much as he can, but he also said that if something does not go wrong, it depends on, how this goes. He was not very confident about it. But how long can Trump go on, and how much patience do you think Trump would have at this moment? Or he would just try to actually say that he has stopped 8 wars and somehow this one is just not happening?
Well, I have no doubt that Trump would very much like to be able to take credit for being a world leader who successfully brought this war, maybe not necessarily to an end, but to at least successfully freeze the conflict so that the killings come to a halt. At the same time, though, I think Trump does not want to be a president who is in power when he pushes for such an arrangement, and then as a result, we see Russian forces moving westward further into Ukraine. So he would, I think, like to, as I said, take credit for freezing the conflict basically along the lines that it's at right now. But I have to assume that Trump and those around him are nervous about a scenario in which much more of Ukraine would fall under Moscow's control. So I think the challenge for the Trump administration is to try to give both sides an incentive to agree to some sort of an arrangement in which the war gets frozen more or less along current lines. But at the same time, there are some, as your viewers are aware, there's some very sticky issues that still have to get worked out before the parties could get to that point. Issues pertaining to control over certain territories definitely being one of the most sticky issues right now.
Right, Mr. Kefiro, those are some very valid points there, but of course we'll have to wait and see how the situation develops. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your valuable perspective with us.
Good to be with you. Thank you.